Hello, everybody. This is Tito Bort at Alti Sales. Here we are again with an SDR Superstar series today. And I have Louise Trump from Degreed. Hey, Louise, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, doing great. Excited about talking to you today, sharing some of your best practices with the audience and understanding what can they learn from somebody like you who hit 400% of quota last month, which is incredible.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm super, super excited. So, you know, let's dive right in. Give the audience some value here. So, you're the best performer. Help us understand. I kind of disclose it's 400% of quota, but how does that look like at your company? How many meetings do you need to get? How are you measured?
yeah. So we are measuring 10 meetings executed. I mean the prospect and the account executive met and had a meeting, and two qualify meetings executed. That means that probably go into the pipeline.
Okay, fantastic. So yeah, common lingo in Silicon Valley that I hear is those would be 10 meetings performed, and some people call it SQL, sales qualified leads. I think in your company you mentioned their SQO, sales qualified opportunities,
Yeah.
which makes sense as a definition. So that's really cool. So help us understand briefly. That seems like two SQOs per month is very a tiny number for many companies because their products aren't too expensive.
hmm
So help us understand a little bit more about what your company does and why this makes sense for you guys.
Yeah. So Degree is a learning platform, and it's a little bit of the new generation of learning. And we sell or target customers are enterprise companies. Usually we go after 5,000 or more, Fortune 500 or Fortune 100, or even Fortune 50. That's usually the accounts that we're looking for. So our little more bigger account, bigger size contract, that's why it's a lower number of qualifying meetings, because it's a little harder to get those clients to respond and to agree to a meeting.
Right. So when you say higher contract values, I mean, I talk to SDRs that are selling things from like $50 a month sometimes all the way to like $5,000 a month. And they're like, oh yeah, 5,000 is a lot, or like
Yeah, no.
10,000. Like where are you at? How
So
big is the
some
contract?
contracts can go to million, and others are 100,000. Usually 100,000 is our lowest for enterprise, up to 500. 500 would be a mid-side contract, but a million. So it's really big contracts.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Incredible. Right. If you're doing two sales qualified opportunities with $1 million contracts, that makes sense.
Yeah,
And you were at 400% off quota, so eight qualified opportunities
yeah,
um, last month worth. So millions of dollars in pipeline. That's incredible.
yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about your work. So is this how much inbound do you get? How much outbound? What's your split? 80/20, 50/50?
I would say 90/10. I'm mostly outbound. The only way that something would come inbound to me is that if it's one of my target accounts, like top Fortune, something that's target, and I have been working on it. So if it comes inbound on some form, which is like a white paper or anything inbound, that's going to touch me and not the inbound group, because I have been working on that account.
Okay. That makes sense. Interesting. Um, cool. So let's talk about your company setup. You're working here at Degreed.
Mhm.
What tools do you use? Are you using a sales acceleration tool, a dialer, email, cadence, sequence, data? Tell me what access do you have?
Yeah, so we use LinkedIn Sales Navigator to find our contacts, find our people, see what they're doing, and look their profile. We use Zoom Info to find the contact as well, to be the lead generation. We do outreach. We use outreach as our sales. We do the sequence. We do the calling through outreach as well,
Okay.
and Salesforce. I don't know if there is anything else. We don't have any call accelerator besides outreach.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. That's cool. And then, well, since you've said that you're using LinkedIn Sales Navigator and you're researching accounts, I assume, does Degreed only give you accounts, or do you get a full territory? You can grab any account in the territory. Do you have very specific target accounts? And then how much information do you get about the contacts? Are you researching like from scratch, going on LinkedIn, or do you get like, oh, here's 20 contacts, figure these ones out?
No, usually we get the account and then we go from there to find the contacts in the account. That's why I use LinkedIn a lot.
Hmm.
And then I use that and Zoom info to build my contact list to start to then start the outreach.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And then
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to the point of reaching out, you know, are you? I heard you say you're doing some calls and some emails. Do you have a call script that they give you and training regarding calling, or is it kind of like on your own? How about the emails? Do you have a lot of email templates that are very structured and you got to follow, or do you have a lot of freedom to kind of like do what you feel?
So we have some scripts that some new reps they use, and we have the freedom to create our own emails, and that's what I do, and that's what I think I do really good. I do go by the buyer persona and then what buyer persona I'm trying to reach and create sequence to that buyer persona, their pain points, what they care about, and try to align that pain if what my solutions are able to accomplish to try to create some adding value and awareness that what we do maybe something that you're looking for. Do you want to talk with us? That's something that interests you.
Right, that makes a lot of sense. And a little bit later in the interview, we're going to dive way more deep into that exact methodology. Seems like the majority of your meetings are coming via email. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Even
Okay.
if I do touch on the phone, usually it's just like an extra touch, but they come mostly by email.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. And very, very, very high contract value. I assume they kind of check out your website and they try to figure out a couple of things before they really agree to a meeting and an engagement. So before we jump into like the specific strategies, I want to understand a little bit about your compensation. So you have a base salary and then a commission. You
Mm-hmm.
mentioned the commission was based on 10 meetings booked and then two of them being qualified and moving down the pipeline. How do you
Mm-hmm.
determine what is qualified? Do you have very specific criteria, or is it up to the AE? Like, who chooses what's qualified, what's not?
Usually it's you reach out to the right persona and they are interested in what we have to say, and they are kind of what on the point ready to dive deeper into a demo.
Right.
So dive deep into the demo and then somewhat open to what we have to say because we're kind of like a new platform, and some companies they're not ready, they're not forward thinker,
Right.
and it's okay, like at least we're driving their awareness. So if they get what we do but we're not prepared, then it's not a qualified meeting. But if they get what we do and they're like, oh, that's interesting, that's something that we have been looking and then we didn't know we need that, so that and then they're engaging and want to move that forward, that's when it's a down the line and putting in the pipeline, and that's something that we're pursuing and talking with
Okay. Interesting. So quick question here. Like, imagine we're reaching out to like Apple, right? And it's like, Fortune 5,
them. Yeah.
right?
He's on the
And you
target list.
get you get the head of learning and development,
Yeah.
right? Or C level, pretty much, like VP of learning and development. The
Mhm.
person's like, I'll take a meeting, and then
Mhm.
comes to the meeting, and they're like, oh, this is cool. We'll look at it in 2020. We have too many other things.
Mhm.
Is that then not a qualified opportunity because it's just not the right time?
Yeah. So what we have is um so kind of like the AE that has a little bit of say. So if the AE don't think they're ready, and then that lead has to be worked, then it goes back to the SDR, and then we kind of have to nurture them, like keep touching and sending articles or anything that keeps them interest to go back and say, you know what, maybe I am ready to listen to this again, or maybe that was not my Q1 strategy, but maybe it's my Q4. So if they kind of re-engage and show that their interest to move that forward, that's when it's a qualified. And if it's a big company, sometimes the AE want to keep that relationship for himself and do this work himself. So, but if it's not Apple, if it's something a little smaller, then it comes back to us and like, you need to work that lead more to go down the pipe.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. That's interesting. And for the audience, there's actually a conference about sales development from InsideSales.com where I'll be speaking, and I've picked that topic specifically, the SDR to AE handoff. We're going to talk about specifically the death zone, which is something what Louise was saying, which is what happens if I book this great meeting, it gets to the AE says they're not ready, they come back to me. I kind of want to get them back, but I don't want to be too pushy. And then the AE doesn't want to take responsibility for it. It's the great contact and target. It's just not ready.
Yeah.
They're shuffling my accounts in 3 months. What if I get different accounts?
Yeah.
It's interesting. So if that's something that's happening at your company, you're part of the audience. December 13th. I'm going to post a link at the bottom of this interview as well, so you can go sign up. I think that's going to be interesting. I hear that a lot. A lot of the people I've interviewed, not only for the SDR Superstar series like we are doing today, but also for like cold calling training and things like that. When we're chit-chatting about their company, a lot of people talk about this like, oh, I'm sending it to the AE. The AE doesn't think it's good, or they think it's better to do X, Y, Z, and it changes things. So
yeah, so it's kind of like a gray area that I agree.
Yeah, definitely. And there's different ways to fix it. I'm going to cover that in the conference. So if that's of interest, you should totally attend.
Yeah.
So let me see where we were. You're a top performer. We talked about your quota. We talked a little bit about you're compensated. You're at 400%. I lost track here of the questions. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about the compensation. I think is what we have left. You're getting compensated on that. Is there a strong accelerator? I mean, your goal is 2 qualified opportunities. What is the third one? Do you get paid more for the third one, or the fourth one, the 10th one, the 20th one, or is it about the same as before?
Yeah, we have a little accelerated. I believe it's 25%.
Okay. So you get 25% more for the third SQO versus the second SQO. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. And this varies tremendously again for the audience. I've seen things like a 300% accelerator to like 0 accelerator. So there's various ranges. And then do you get any compensation on the meeting closing? Like if you book Apple and it's like a $5 million contract and they sell?
No, I wish, right? Because it's a big contract.
Exactly. So nothing coming your way. Yeah, that's another way to incentivize SDRs to book really highly qualified big meetings. But
yeah.
Not in this case. Cool. So help me understand your team structure. Seems like very high contract values.
Mm-hmm.
Field sales reps, or are they inside?
Yeah, field. Yeah.
Okay, so you have field sales reps. And then are you paired to, you have target accounts, or are you 100% paired with one AE, or do you have multiple AEs that you have a few accounts for?
Yeah, we are paired between 2 and 3 AEs. And since they're field reps, they have their territories. So we are kind of working their territories. So we work territories.
So you have one SDR for 2 or 3 AEs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that makes sense.
Their territory, and their territories divide between really high target accounts and other accounts that are not so targeted, not so top priority, but we're still working on them.
Right. Yeah. A lot of companies do that as well. They call it tier 1 and tier 2 or things like that, and they have like hyper targeted and a little bit less priority, but still like expected to be prospecting.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So let's dive deeper into your techniques and methods. Let's get really tactical here and practical for the audience. They want to learn how the hell does someone get to 400% of quota, specifically via email. tell me, like, what are you doing, and what can we learn from your strategies?
Okay, so I think, and reading your articles, not every prospecting strategy gonna work for everyone. So these works for me. I don't know if it's gonna work for everybody, but
Right.
you know, people are free to try, you know, and see what works for you. So on me is like I'm targeting really high enterprise companies. They're head of L&D people, and they're really busy. And some of these people, they're don't want to talk with us on the phone, and they barely read their emails. So if they're going to open my email, I want to make sure that's something that adding value to them. I just don't want to send an email, hey, have you saw my previous email? Hey, I'm checking up again. So I try to send every email some adding some form of value. So what I do a lot before I write any email, I look my buyer persona, I separate them, and what are they looking for, what kind of pain points they're probably going, and how my solution can help that pain point. And try to write my email, each email trying to solve one pain, because I never know what pain they're going through and if they're going at all. But if I pick one pain for email per email, and then try to put how my solution can help that, and some way kind of try to engage them on my email, and my call to action actually depends. If like early in the cycle, I try to be a little more soft call to action, like, is that something that you're interested, is that something that you're going through? And I try to get a stronger call to action, and later on my sequence on asking if they have time, and ask if 15 minutes makes sense. So I build that up my sequence in that way, and trying to create an awareness that maybe what you're going through is something that we can solve, and creating a better and stronger CTA through the sequence.
Okay, so I picked up on a few key things here. It's one pain per email, and
Mm-hmm.
then it's a growing in strength call to action.
Mm-hmm.
Um, One thing I'm going to ask you to do, unless you want to read one of your emails that has worked recently, is to share that email sequence with me, and taking all the like proprietary information that we might not want to share or whatever. I'm gonna try to post as much value to the audience. Somewhere around this video, up, down, somewhere you're gonna see one, two, three, four, whatever, a few emails at least that the audience can check out and start learning what are some things you're doing. And don't send me just the template. I want to see like an actual email that you sent and kind of worked, or part of the sequence that you sent and worked, because I want to see your level of personalization, right? A lot of
Mm-hmm.
people are like personalize, 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 and what I hate is when people are like, oh yeah, I just add value. For example, like you'll see this all over LinkedIn, like, oh, when you call me, don't ask if it's a bad time, just add value. But they never give you the specifics. They criticize the specifics, and then they give you very vague advice. What does add value mean, right? And it's kind of like when you get it, you get it, and you still say let's add value, but you're at a different level of understanding. So what I want the audience to see is, what does Louise Trump mean by adding value, and what does that look like very tactically in your emails, so that they can repurpose some of that content and thinking, internalize it, and execute for their own product and help them become better SDRs.
So the way I separate, so I'm gonna personalize. I just do really deep personalization to my top priority accounts, where I take really the time to understand it and to take my message specific to that company, not just the industry, not just to the persona, but to that company. What I have been reading about that company specific, and apply that message to that company. That's personalization. What I say to the other companies, I do a little more targeted, like to that persona and to their pain points that they probably all having. So it's a
Right.
difference between personalization and target to, you know.
Yeah, personalized to like the general industry or company, instead of like instead of like the specific company, right? Like, you know,
Mm-hmm.
whatever X company just IPO'd, right? Oh, I
Mm-hmm.
saw your IPO, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now the question is, do you personalize to the company or to the department, right? Do you try to find information about their learning and development program, or like their head of learning and development, and like maybe she, like her LinkedIn profile says, I love dogs. Are you gonna send her a picture of a dog? Are you gonna send her a meme of a dog? Do you ever do that, or do you keep it very serious? Like
I
you have a
keep,
$1 million product, right?
yeah, I keep it serious because I think I try to be more about how can I help your job. Like
Okay.
I've tried before to be a little more personal about, hey, I saw you have dogs, or but that is in the end of the day doesn't add the value that they need to, to create the need to like, okay, let's talk. It's more about building rapport, I believe. So
Yep.
I try to stay on the how I can see I can add value. And then as I say, like some companies they're not prepared for our product. Like it has to have a little mature line of like the learning and development, and sometimes you can pick that through their company reports or their even their LinkedIn profile. You can see sometimes they have a job description of what they do, and sometimes you can pick how mature the company is and if there would be a really good value, or if they're still on the beginning of the process of recognizing where it has evolved. So it's good to look at the LinkedIn and see how mature the company is, at least for my job.
And then you mentioned something interesting. You said company report. So, like, what are some areas where you're finding data for personalization? Like, everybody looks at LinkedIn profiles. Everybody's
Mm-hmm.
gonna go look at the LinkedIn employee count or whatever with
Mm-hmm.
Sales Navigator. But like, are you downloading like public companies like quarterly reports and reading their finances and
Sometimes, like depends on the company. If it's my top company, then I'm gonna take the time to try to find as much information as I can. But yeah, so I usually get the information through the LinkedIn, the articles that they share, and the job description that they have on LinkedIn, um, public public news about the company. Sometimes you can see a little bit there. Um, um, like where the head of learning and development spoke recently and what they spoke about it. Sometimes they give you a little bit of insights about their company, and if nothing else, I can see if they're really innovator companies that tie a little bit of learning, because to innovate you kind of have to have the skills and the future skills to innovate. So that influence to like how the company it's mature or not mature, or like where they at, or how I'm gonna make my message to them. So I feel things evolve and or change depending on the company.
Cool. That's very interesting. I think that's helpful because we got a little bit more specific there into, their reports, looking at the conferences they have attended and how to find that data. A lot of it can come through LinkedIn. Like if I'm a head of learning and development, I'm sharing an article on this conference I spoke. Like I do this, right? Like I said, I'm going to be speaking at this conference on December 13th. I mentioned it already. I said I'm going to post the link below, like I'm promoting it. So now if somebody wants to target me, if they say, Tito, I'm really excited about your conference talking about the SDR to AE handoff and what you've learned. Do you have any other articles? And where do you save those articles, right? And then they can be like, oh, I have a document organization software that can help you or whatever, you know like there's a way in there through really understanding what my head is going through over the next couple of weeks or where I'm just coming from.
Yeah.
So cool,
and i
that's really cool.
and I believe that there is so many vendors and they get bombarded with so many emails that some way you have to stand out. So I like you either have to stand out by knowing what they care, how what they're probably going through, or you try to personalize if you have the time, and if that's one account that you think that gonna pay off in the end, like one big account, then you can have the time to personalize to the account, like what you specifically saw about them and how you can help them.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thanks for sharing that. That's really cool. Because I'll share it with the audience. So seems like you don't book a lot of meetings via phone. You don't book a lot of meetings via social. However, you do use both, like social for doing some research and understanding how to target, and then phone. Do you ask them if they've seen your email, or do you whenever you leave a voicemail, do you say I'm sending you an email, or do you say call me back? Like
Yeah,
how?
I do both. I think I follow up, I call, and then I leave the voicemail, and then I send an email right away. So it's kind of like an extra touch. So even though I'm not, so most of my meetings come by email, but it's a whole thing that works together. And I touch their LinkedIn profile. They see that I visit, and if they have shared any articles on their profile that has anything to do with what I do, I usually like it. Or even I sometimes I go further and I make a comment. So kind of like a little soft touches here and there that builds this, like, okay, and my emails adding value. So it's a whole thing that creates like, okay, let's talk.
Right. Okay. Right. I've seen some annoying people on LinkedIn being like, you post something, and I'm sure you're not doing this, but just want to clarify it for the audience. But I've seen somebody like I post like, oh, I think Bitcoin's gonna crash, right?
Yeah.
And somebody comments, hey Tito, let's talk about learning and development. What are you up to on Tuesday at 10 a.m.? And I'm like, that's strange. So if I post something like, "Hey, Bitcoin's gonna crash," what would you comment, or what would you say to that? Like, if that was my last post and I'm head of learning and development, would you add anything? Would you comment? Would you like? Would you not even touch it? Go to the
I
next
want
one.
to touch because that Bitcoin doesn't even have anything to do with what I do, and doesn't even have anything to do with my product. But if you were saying, um, like my company, it's developing a new product for learning and development, we're really excited, then it has something to do with what I do. Then
Right.
that's when I comment like, hey, I would love to hear what are you doing, what is your strategies, or what exciting that you have on your roadmap, or
Oh,
anything that I create
cool.
a little bit of connection. And I'm not trying to sell the meeting. Listen, that I'm just trying to hear more about what is exciting then.
Right. Oh, that's really cool. I like that. This
Yeah.
seems like reminds me of, even though I haven't read this book, I'm very honest of other books I read. I have a long list of like over 100 books I've read. I sent those to Hector Forward when after our interview. He was shocked by that. But I haven't read this book called Jab 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 Hook, which is by Gary Vaynerchuk. However, I do understand the concept very well. There you go. Is
Yeah.
that what got you to follow
Yeah.
that strategy?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. You want to build before you ask for the meeting. You want to build the trust. You want to build the message. You want to give, and then you ask.
Right. It's
Mm.
so hilarious. The audience is totally gonna think that this was 100% planned, and we're giving a shout
It's
out
not.
to like Gary V, but we're not. Like I had no idea you had that book. What are
Yeah.
some other books? What else have you read? Like how do you become a better SDR?
I read a lot. I read your articles. I read a lot of things on LinkedIn. I think people should totally take advantage of that. It's free. People are sharing. What I do, I'm not afraid to ask for, hey, I think you're great. Can you mentor me? Can you tell me what do you know that I should know? Or I'm not afraid to ask for people's, like, share what you know, share anything. So I'm always reaching out to people. Hey, I love your concept. Like, like, please share more. Or I don't know. I'm always networking and trying to be a better SDR every day.
Right. I'm loving this interview because the SDRs are not only learning the tactics, such as how to add value, but they're learning the mindset behind somebody like you who's hit, 400% of quota. It's not about the latest tool or the latest trick or the latest thing. It's about like on a daily basis, grinding, reading books, reading articles, reaching out to people, asking for help,
Mm-hmm.
and if I can give some advice to that, I've done a lot of the same throughout my career. If you go back to like some of my first blog posts, I think the first one I wrote is the challenges in building a Bay Area sales team. I remember reaching out to professors in college who weren't even my teachers, and to like alumni, and say like, hey, Ed Cheeley, I've been following your work. I love what you do. I want to go meet with you. I can do any day, anytime. If it's 3 a.m. on Tuesday, I'll be there.
Tell me what works for you, and I will be there. That's what I do.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've done the same, and it works tremendously because I feel like when you do that, people understand that you're there to like just go above and beyond to get their advice.
Yeah.
I think the worst tactic you can do, which is also like thinking of the SDR mindset, is when somebody says, "Hey Tito, can you give me advice? Maybe on Friday at 2 p.m. or if you're free at 3." Like my schedule is too busy for me to try to cram you into when
It's,
I can give you advice, right? If
yeah.
you want
It's like
advice,
I want
I'll
to
tell
work
you,
around your schedule.
right?
Yeah.
And you know what's funny? You know what I do nowadays? Because of these interviews and so on, a lot of people have been asking me for advice, and I purposely schedule all those calls very late at night. I'm like, oh yeah, sure, Tuesday at 9:30 p.m. Pacific, and I know they're Eastern. And like, if they want to go to bed before
Yeah.
12:30, that's fine. I don't have time. But if you want to talk to me, you want to get my advice. I give a lot of people a lot of advice. I've been very lucky in my life where I've gotten a lot of advice, but I've also known that I had to go above them. I would offer people like when people are traveling, I'm like, man, I'll go pick you up from the airport. I'll give you a ride to the hotel, right?
Yeah,
Don't
yeah,
just
you
do
do
smart
what it
calls.
takes to get that person. They're busy. Like you're gonna do something that around their schedule. You're not gonna be like, oh no, I can only do it 7. Like, hey, you're never gonna get a hold of that person. So
Right.
if you tell me 9 p.m., like, okay, that's a sacrifice that you do for what you want.
Right. And it's also showing your commitment to getting that meeting and advice. So really appreciate that. I want to hear, I'm a fan of books on top of Jab 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 Hook by Gary Vee. What are some other books that you think have in some way, shape, or form influenced your work as an SDR?
Yeah. So besides that, I think the
Or are there any others? I mean, maybe there's none. I don't want you to
have
say
like
something
a
that.
whole thing of books right here behind the computer. So
Okay.
I read a lot. I think that there's so many books out there that are great. And some of the books are go a little more about the base of the SDR, which is like the calling and the email and the structure. And some other books are more creative, such that how to book a meeting with anyone that
Right.
that say a little bit about that, like creativity. You send mailing, and I think that you can apply when your top accounts where you're going to spend a little more time and a little more money, make a little more thoughtful approach. And
Right.
that works, if your company pays for it and it helps you and it let you do creative work, then go for it. And that's something that I have been trying as well, like trying to create a list of the accounts that I'm going to send things on the mail, and I'm going to try to reach out in another channel, which is, I think, that direct mail coming back to do
That's
that.
cool. What
Yeah.
have you tried there? What have you mailed people?
We have how the workforce is learning lately. So it's like a report to how the workforce is learning and evolving. And it's kind of like a little bit of like awareness is like trying to awareness, like, is that where you at? Or have you thought about how the workforce is learning? As I say, again, it's a little more about creating the jab, to then after that, I ask for the meeting.
So this is incredible. What you're saying is you're mailing them a report on learning and development. Like what I've seen other people do is like, oh, I'm gonna send them cupcakes, right? And this can work many times for different areas. Again, I'll give credit for that to Matt Amundsen from Everstring,
Yeah.
who is like, I love cupcakes and whatever, and he'll take a meeting for cupcakes. However, like I've seen things like I'm gonna send you a drone and I don't send you the controller for the drone. And
Mhm.
if you take a meeting, I'll mail you the controller. Or I'm gonna send you a case for these Ray-Ban sunglasses. And then
And
you open the case, there's nothing. And you're
yeah.
like, oh my guys, and it's a note, right? Hey, if you really want the Ray-Ban glasses, you got to take a meeting. But it's interesting because your approach, you've been talking about building value, and like those things are like cool gimmicks to get me a
Mhm.
meeting. But
Mhm.
if I get that, if I get a iPhone X, box, and and then it's like there's a meeting. I feel cheated, and I'd be like, oh no. And if I'm taking the meeting, I care nothing about their product. Like, I'm just gonna show up so I can get the glasses. I'm just gonna show up so I can get the controller.
And that's something that you need to be aware that sometimes if you're just doing that and you having people showing up because of the prize that they're going to get to get a meeting, maybe they don't have an interest.
Right. I think your chances of getting an SQO, right, or a sales qualified opportunity are much lower, even though you might be getting more meetings. So it depends how companies compensate you and how much they're willing to spend on direct mail and things like that. But it seems like today we've gotten a lot of really, really, really cool techniques and methods, as well as like the mindset, the reading education. If you want to send me a list of books, I'll also publish it below. So we have a lot of things, links, books, cadences, a lot of. There's going to be a long blog post, so be
Okay.
prepared, audience.
Yeah.
Cool. I want to start wrapping up. This has been an amazing interview. Tell me about your favorite thing that your company does to keep you engaged at work or excited about the companies. There's something in particular that you want to highlight.
What I like about Degree is that we have a big flexibility, that we work from home most of the time. We go to the office twice a week, but most of the time we work from home. And for me, it works because I sit down and I put my focus on it, and then I get things done. And it works for me. It doesn't work for everybody to work from home. Nobody's that dedicated and can get into the mood and get things done. But for me, it works, and it's a flexibility that I really appreciate it. But yeah, so I think that that's something that I really like it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And like I get a lot of responses here from different people about like, oh yeah, they do spiffs. Like, oh, if I book a meeting, I get Starbucks coffee, or if I do this, I get that, or something we're starting at Alti Sales in 2018 is the SDR Presidents Club, for example, where
Awesome.
I've felt kind of like cheated by the sales organizations where, yeah, if their sales reps sell a lot of revenue, then they have this trip to Hawaii and they spend 5 days and go golfing and do all these cool things. Yeah, for the SDRs, there's nothing. So I've said I'm going to change the industry one step at a time. What we're doing is we're going to be sending our top SDRs to Cancun, Mexico. It's a shorter trip. We're not throwing as much money on it as most companies do. You're not flying first class or anything. You're flying economy. You're one bag allowed. Cancun. You're not staying at a 5-star all-inclusive hotel. You're staying at a fine hotel, maybe 3.5, 4 stars. But it's all about the adventure. It's
Yeah.
about we're gonna go, we're gonna do a boat trip with like maybe open bar on Friday, right? On
Mhm.
Saturday we might go water skiing or bungee jumping or scuba diving, right? We can have a few different events every President's Club, and then it's a bonding time, and then we'll do a dinner and we'll do champagne and we'll celebrate and we give you a reward, and then maybe Sunday it's kind of like a day off. You're on the beach with your friends, you relax, and then Sunday night we fly you back. So um, the
Okay,
other
you're
thing,
gonna make all of us jealous.
oh,
But
that's the idea. That's
oh,
the idea.
okay, you're making us jealous.
Um, I mean, it's all. I really believe in this. Like, if we build an amazing culture and we start doing these things, and then it's the all other big difference there. It's a quarterly club. It's not a yearly club, right? We're spending way less money, right? So rather than spending $30,000 per employee or $10,000 per employee or whatever, I'm spending maybe $2,000 per employee, right? $500 plane tickets, $200 hotel for 3 nights, another $500 in events, and then that's it, right? So I'm
Mhm.
spending way less money, and therefore I can do it more frequently because a lot of SDRs don't stay as SDRs for like 10 years like AEs do, right? But if we do every quarter, like as an SDR in your career, if you have 5 opportunities to go to the SDR Presidents Club, like according to my team, they would do anything to get into that club. So I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, and I think I could keep the motivation going if you do it more often.
Yeah, of course, that's the idea, right?
Yeah.
Like people go, they're coming back, and we're taking one day off, right? We're taking a Friday off. But the people who are staying, they're coming back, and you see all their pictures all over social media that they were swimming with dolphins. Like, I want to get there. And the other,
Yeah.
Exactly. And the other part is we're constantly training our employees, right? We do a lot of call recordings. You might be familiar with our other series. I want to link that below too, where I'm doing cold calling training with random people from other companies. But if we're helping you get better, and then we're setting up all the incentives and motivation to get better. We have a lot of remote workers too, which is interesting. But I actually don't like people working from home most of the time. A lot of people are like, I love to work from home, and they've never done it. And
Yeah.
when you do, like, I've tried this before. I like look at my bed and I'm like, yeah, I've done 20 calls. Let me just take a 5 minute nap, and that 5 minute nap turns into 5 hours, and then I don't get anything.
I have a habit. I have to get up, like I'm going to the office. I get up, I get in the shower, I get ready, and I sit on my
Right.
computer. And I think my company gets more from me from home than in the office because I don't take a lunch, I don't take a break because I'm so in the mood, I'm so dedicated that I don't want to get out because I know it's gonna mess my the way that I'm working. So I just
Right.
stay, work really hard, and then I'm done.
Yeah, it requires a lot of discipline though, and it seems like you've got that. What I do for my remote employees is we work all out of co-working spaces. So like I'm gonna give a shout out here. You might see the logos. I'm at the Sasser Co-Selling Space by Jason Lemkin. And then I have people in different places like in Nest and WeWorks and things like that. They all work out of co-working spaces, and it works for them. I'm yet to try some people working from home. I have one candidate that might start doing that, who's joining our company in January. So we'll see. I mean, at least you're showing me that it's possible, and like I don't need to be too afraid of letting people work
I think you
from
need to
home.
have discipline, and then you need to have somebody that's really um, committed and I don't know, driven, and it works. But yeah,
Yep.
it's not for everybody. That's for sure.
Awesome. Cool. This has been one of the longer interviews, but I think one of the most useful as well. I don't think I have any other questions to ask you. I'm so pumped about all the content we're gonna put out there. It's gonna take me a little while to collect all the info,
Yeah,
but
I will send you my emails.
amazing. Any other things you want to tell the audience? Good ways to get in touch with you? Any things you're looking for, you need, or things you're willing to do for other people? I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah, if you want to know more how I'm doing or anything, just pick me on LinkedIn and send me something, and we can connect. We can have a little chat, and I can share my brain. I don't know everything, but the little that I know, I can share.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, the audience is going to appreciate that. And if you're an SDR and AE, you work in sales, sales operations, sales development, sales enablement, I want to connect with you as well. Add me on LinkedIn. If you're outside the industry and you still think that my content's really awesome, definitely follow me. You can scroll down at the bottom of the blog and click follow. And I'll keep putting out amazing content. And I know this is applicable to other industries and other companies too. And yeah, thank you for listening. It was great having you here, Luis, and
Yeah.
hopefully everybody enjoyed it. We'll talk
Thanks.
soon. Bye.
Bye.